I'm Jerry Kirk. I came to know the Lord through Young Life in 1949 at Star Ranch. When I told Mike McCutcheon, the captain of our university basketball team, that I'd given my heart to Christ. And I wanted to be with Mike McCutcheon because he was the star player in the whole city of Seattle. By the way, Ad Sewell tried to get me to camp, and I said, no, Ad, I'm playing in tennis tournaments all summer, and I can't do it. And so then he went to Mike McCutcheon and said, wouldn't you like to invite Jerry Kirk to come with you? Mike was the key, and Ad knew that Mike would be the key. I was going to go to a seminary at Fuller in California, and my pastor was called to be a pastor in Pittsburgh, and so he sought me out and said, Jerry, I want you to come to Pittsburgh because I'd like to have you lead our youth group in Pittsburgh. And I said, I'm not interested. I'm going to go to Fuller in California, and I'm going to lead the Glendale Young Life Club. So my pastor went to Jim Rayburn and said, wouldn't you like to start Young Life in Pittsburgh? And wouldn't you like to send Jerry Kirk there? Yes, Jim thought that was a good idea. So Jim came to me. He said, that would be much more significant than you're just leading a club in Glendale. I'd love to have you do that. I feel called. When Jim Rayburn suggests something, you feel called. I went from Pittsburgh to New Wilmington, Pennsylvania, and was pastor across the street from Westminster College. Cincinnati, College Hill Presbyterian Church sought me out, and I did not think my work was done in New Wilmington. So I said no in a final way. And then they came back a second time, and I said no in a final way. And praise God, they came back a third time. And I said to my wife, I think we ought to go see what's happening in Cincinnati. Maybe the Lord is calling us there. What happened was I arrived on a weekend, and the middle-aged couples group was meeting the following Friday. I turned to the woman on my left, and I said, Lois, what led you to want to come in to talk about it? And we'll just go around the circle. Gil was about the seventh person. He talked about being a hellion, but that he had opened his heart to Jesus about 10 months before at a preaching mission by Don Mumma, the All-American linebacker from UCLA. And what I saw in Gil some tremendous leadership skills.
And we got back, and Jerry announced, well, I'm not a morning person, so this is yours, Gil. And I'd never done anything like it. As a matter of fact, it scared me to death. But we started it up. I had no idea what I was doing, but the first summer after we started, we had a couple of college kids involved from Pittsburgh that were involved in Young Life there. And they got me introduced to Young Life, and Young Life was having a leadership training camp out in Colorado. And I got booked for that, so I got a total of 1 week's training in Christian youth work. And that's the sum and substance of my formal education, but at the time, Teen Breakfast Club had grown, I don't know, might have gotten to 100 kids, but from 6 or 7 different high schools. Kids just kept bringing kids, and kept bringing kids. And it just, over the years, it got to the place that we were having 700 kids on a weekend, on a Thursday morning at 6:30 in the morning. That's when I decided, well, we need to make this Young Life and go into the different high schools. So that's when we made the joined up with Young Life, and I ended up on their staff.
After 10 months, I gave him our youth group. And after about a year, that youth group had grown to over 600 at 6:30 on Thursday mornings, and we were feeding bacon and eggs and cereal and juice for all these kids. And then Gil would speak. And man, God touched those young people through him.
I'm Gordon Anapul. I graduated from Green Hills High School in 1986. Of those 7 schools that Gil mentioned, Green Hills High School is one of them. And that's where I was a student, and as a freshman, encountered Jesus in a way that changed my life forever.
I'm Nikki Wilbrand. I went to Miami University and was a volunteer leader at Hamilton High School. And after graduation, went on Young Life staff in the central Cincinnati area. Was on staff for 7 years, and then have just continued to be a volunteer leader at Lakota West High School since 1997, where I still lead now. So when I started leading, when I was a student at Miami, I think there were about 30-ish people in the room, and God kept bringing leaders and providing harvesters to go. Going from 35 leaders in 93 or so to 2006, where we had over 100 leaders and 3 staff, I think, at the time. There weren't enough people to help foster the growth of our volunteer leaders, and so we decided at that point to expand the areas. To date, the growth has been almost double what we had from then.
And these volunteer leaders would also take it upon themselves to take steps of faith. 2 Miami students felt called to go to high school students with special needs, and so that was the start of Middletown Capernaum, which was the first Capernaum ministry for all of Greater Cincinnati, and it was started by 2 volunteer leaders. Wildlife started the same way in area schools, that our staff would be so maxed out caring for leaders and donors and their own club that often the new work would be volunteer leaders.
At that same time, we were really pushing to get Wildlife started in Lakota. My daughter was in 5th grade. Dino and I just began to see, Dino's my husband, began to see a need for younger students to hear about Jesus earlier. And so I started a Bible study actually with Rebecca and a group of her friends. Now with these group of girls just graduated, and to see what God has done, in their lives, looking at a 5th grade girl who I never thought in a million years would know Jesus, let alone be a world changer, who I feel like she is. Like, God is using her in exponential ways to reach other lost middle schoolers and high schoolers in our community. One of the things that I think makes Young Life in Cincinnati unique is, and compared to other places around the country, is the volunteer leaders. And not just the sheer number of them necessarily, but I think the fact that people put down roots here and they lead and they stay and they move around to different places, but you don't go other places in the country and see that. Many people are asking staff all the time, how do you have this growth? How do you have so many leaders? And I think it's because people put down roots. I don't know, I look at people around our city who now have kids who are in high school and they're leading and supporting leaders.
I agree, Nikki. There's a legacy of volunteer leadership that goes back to Chuck and Trish Brooks at Forest Park and Green Hills High School, Cliff Hearn at Indian Hill, Chuck Osborne at Aiken High School, back right in the start of this whole movement. And there has been a quality of leadership coming from volunteers. And like you said, Nikki, when we stay and have our families, and then it becomes a way of life with children. The leaders' children are exposed to Young Life at such an early age, and we become part of the fabric of the community in that way. The ripple effect of the mission of Young Life in Greater Cincinnati and its touch to the world is really profound. In the 50 years, there are upwards of 55 kids who grew up in Cincinnati and went out to go on Young Life staff. One is on staff today in London. One went to Kenya years ago. Many have gone to all parts of the United States. Some have returned and are now serving on committee or serving again as volunteer leaders. What is sure, this ripple effect is felt around the globe and continues to have that impact today.
People really do go out and change the world. And the amount of people who've either met Jesus here or who had led here and had gone on to give their lives away in another ministry, another mission field, their occupation. I feel like that number is what probably will bring me to tears thinking about true life change, because people see what it means to give their life away and they see how God's hand moves. When lives are changed, I feel like it changes people forever and for eternity. And there are some incredible people who've come out of this community and are going on to change the world.
I find myself thrilled with the way Young Life has gone in its vision for the church and its vision for kids. Young Life works with kids better than anybody in the world. And they do so out of the deep wellspring of God's grace and God's love and God's power. And man, am I glad to be part of what God is doing through Young Life. I'm so thankful.